you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome. You're tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere in the world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed. You can also follow the show on Instagram and Facebook. Just put in Viewpoint with Father John, and you can also now follow me on Twitter. Just put Father John Reed, that's R-E-I-D, the proper Irish spelling of that name, not English. And, you can follow what we do. And I know a lot of people contact me through those three media platforms, social platforms. And I appreciate that. I appreciate the notes you send me, particularly with feedback on the shows. And I really do pay attention. And some of you know I even email back. So keep up the communication. All of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I'm on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing of false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. And folks, I tell you about my favorite pharmacy in the city of Claremont, which is called Claremont Pharmacy. It's owned by Dr. Nikki Ho, and they take care of all my pharmaceutical needs. Look, if you're tired of feeling like you're just a number, go to Claremont Pharmacy. Not only is Nikki a great pharmacist, she's also a chemist, and so she knows what she's given you pharmaceutically and can tell you if it's not good for you or not, and she's very honest, very personable, and the whole staff there is really, you'll really be glad that you went there, and tell them that Father John said hi. And while you're in Claremont, just go down the road to BC Cafe, also known as Kickback Jack's, because they are serving outside meals and also food to go. Now, I'll give you a warning ahead of time. Come with a big appetite, because they give you enough food to feed 2 men and a boy. And it's good food. It's not just a lot of food, it's good food. So when you go over there, tell them Father John said hi, and, tell them to give you my good table. Or if you see me over there, please stop by and say hi. And then lastly, I want to tell you about my friend Glenn Kirshner's program on YouTube called Justice Matters. Why do I send you over there? And I want to state, this is not a paid advertisement. I talk about Justice Matters because justice does matter. And if you want straight information that's not geared toward the left or the right, but it's just straight information, this is the thing you want to follow. Because Glenn was a federal prosecutor for 30 years. Before that, he was a JAG lawyer, a prosecutor in the Army. And being that I was in the Army once, I have great respect for that. But he's a good guy, and he's a friend of mine, and he won't steer you wrong. So Justice Matters. You can see the sticker to Team Justice here on my laptop, those of you looking on YouTube right now, because I do support what he does, and I'm proud to be associated with him. As we have to do each week, and I choose to do this, because I think it's so important, we're going to go over the COVID numbers. Folks, please, this is not a hoax. And when it comes to the vaccine, I'm already on a waiting list, so I'm telling you, we got to get medically smart, wear a mask. You can see Dr. Smith and I both have our masks, and they do help. They do help. I don't care what some of these nut jobs are saying that, it doesn't. No, the CDC and the FDA have conclusively, along with the World Health Organization, say they help greatly. They're not foolproof, but you got to stop being a fool. You'll live longer. And so here's the numbers. As of 10 minutes before the show, and I get my numbers from Johns Hopkins University, so you're aware, these are reliable numbers. These are not political numbers. Confirmed cases at this time is 15,599,122. That's a lot of people, kids. And confirmed deaths as of 10 minutes before the show, 292,001. That's a lot of empty chairs around tables this Christmas. Please don't make the numbers go up because you're foolish and traveling through these days. Look, we all have people we want to see. We do. But we have to be smart. And so we have Zoom, we have all kinds of stuff. You know, for Thanksgiving, Gabby and I just stayed at home because of the fact if I get this, I'm dead. I have so many of the precursors that I wouldn't survive it. And she stayed home because she doesn't want to be a spreader either of this thing. So having said all that, I'm delighted to say that I have a co-host tonight, not just a guest, but a co-host for the next 4 shows, which is Dr. John Smith. And you know, he's one of my heroes and one of my best friends. And Dr. John Smith is a psychotherapist, a professor, and author of the book, The Authentic Man, A Guide to Happiness and Purpose. Those of you watching on YouTube, you can see that on your screen right now. Thank you for that, Frank. Hey, we have the best sound engineer in the business. Frank is just, he's the bomb. He's the bomb. But Dr. Smith and I wanted to take a few weeks to talk about the emotional health of what's going on right now because people are stressed out. People are experiencing things emotionally they may not have experienced before. And we want to let you know you're not the only one doing this. And we want to help identify some of it, but also give you some ideas on how to cope with some of it. So it's not just naming it, but also giving you some ideas of how to deal with it. And so, Dr. Smith, please say hi.
Hello, everybody. I know most of you that are regular listeners know who I am. I've been a frequent guest, and I'm Father John's fill-in host on several occasions. I'm excited that I'm co-hosting because I got a promotion. Let's just say I feel real proud that I'm getting to sit in this chair as a co-host. And just thank you very much, Father John, for thinking enough about me and respecting me enough to invite me into this chair. So hopefully we can be of service to the audience.
Absolutely, and I wouldn't have anybody else do that. So during this last week, you and I were talking about one of the things we should probably cover is hypervigilance. And you want to talk to people about what that kind of means because they may not know.
All right. Hypervigilance is a term that describes being on high alert. So being on high alert means that I'm hyper aware of what's going on around me. Now, that's something that we all have built into our fight or flight survival mechanism. We share that with the entire animal kingdom. When there is danger or perceived danger or the possibility of danger or a threat, our system amps up and creates this sense of urgency, hyper-awareness. And the problem is that if I'm a rabbit and that happens to me while I'm being chased by a wolf, when the rabbit gets in the hole and the rabbit's safe, rabbit's system resets itself. So the rabbit might be hypervigilant or alert, extra alert when he comes out of his hole to go back to the garden, but he doesn't stay that way.
Right.
So this hypervigilant, as well as other things that are going on under stress, that is designed to be used in case of emergency only. Unfortunately, for some people before COVID and everything else, because of past traumas and other things they've experienced, their system was created almost to be in that state in a constant, maybe even since childhood. They never did get back to a zero, so they're walking around in a constant state of hypervigilance, hyperarousal. They startle easily and things like that. I think now with COVID and with the political climate and with, everything that's going on, I think that people who weren't normally in a state of hypervigilance are now experiencing it. So for many, many people, they're not used to this.
Well, yeah, and I think it's also being exacerbated by the fact that we all thought that after the election, things would calm down, and instead things got ramped up. And so no matter who you voted for, there's fear on both sides and anger on both sides. And one of the ways that people are being hyper vigilant that I've noticed is when a car goes by their car, they look to see what kind of bumper stickers on it because they're afraid of who voted for who. And there's part of them that are really being very hostile to some of these bumper stickers. And I don't have to call them out who it is. If you've seen them, you know who I'm talking about, because they're being violent with people on the road, trying to run people off the road. So that adds to the adrenaline coming up.
Well, it means that for some, the threat or the danger is real.
Right, that's my point.
For all of us, I believe that there is the possibility or the threat of danger, regardless of
Sure.
who knows, and whether that threat is COVID, whether that threat is violence due to, political issues. I think everybody right now is like on edge waiting to see what happens next and being
Yes.
hyper aware of what's going on around them, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I want to emphasize that doesn't mean you're crazy.
Right,
Exactly. And then people that are prone may be having extra anxiety. They may have even having panic attacks and things like that.
And
They might be experiencing other kinds of emotional turmoil as well, depression and things like that. And if that's happening, it's not abnormal. It's a response.
right.
But we don't want it to go on too long because that causes other issues, which we'll be talking about in our next 3 or 4 weeks, as well as tonight. We'll be covering a lot of those topics. So, but if that's here's something I would ask: if that any of these things we're talking about applies to you, send us an email or send us some communication so that we make sure that we talk about it on the air and answer your question or cover it in general, so that maybe you'll feel better and also know that you're not alone.
And you could also send some of those communications through the contact on viewpointwithfatherjohn.com. It's all spelled out, father spelled out, so it's not abbreviated. But there's a contact button on there, and so if you want to contact that way, or you can get us through Facebook, Instagram, or you can send it to me through Twitter. So we're on all those platforms, and these are important things. Some of the things that's been reported to me is people finding with the panic attacks that they'll just be sitting and it feels like they're starting to have a heart attack.
Yep.
And there's nothing going on around them. They just don't know why they're so panicked, and they start going into a cold sweat. Their hands become clammy. And then they start getting scared, which elevates what's going on.
Exactly.
And what I've told some of the people, and I know I'm doing this close to a commercial break, but we'll hang on for a couple minutes. I give them some breathing techniques to help start bringing it down. You know, the classic one of, breathing in through your nose to a count of 4, blowing it out your mouth to a count of 12, so it's slower coming out, and doing that at least 3 times, because as you know, that resets the brain. We teach that in domestic violence classes to bring
Exactly.
people's...
You want to know something really silly that works extraordinarily well, I found? It's not something
Yes.
you hear many counselors and therapists recommending, but I found that it works really well. It's simple and it's kind of stupid, but it works. Sing at the top of your lungs as loud as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Turn on the music if you want, or sing a song that comes to mind. The reason that it works so well is that, one, it requires different circuitry and attention of your brain to go to the song and to focus on the song and the music, which automatically takes your mind away from what's going on inside your body. And it may take a little bit of time, and people may think you're a little weird for singing at the top of your lungs. It works, and the breathing does too, but sometimes if I'm in a panic attack, the last thing I can do is control my breathing because I'm
Sure.
hyperventilating. But if I can sing a song at the top of my lungs,
There you go.
that requires
Breath.
controlled breathing and breath. So everything is going to reset itself back to normal. And I've recommended this to many, many clients, and they've come back to me and they said, it worked. They were surprised because it sounds so silly, but it does work. And I'm talking people who've had a history of very severe, debilitating panic attacks. It really does work.
Well, speaking of panic attacks, Frank is holding up a chancla he's going to throw at me if we don't go to commercial break. So while we go to break, you can practice some of your singing technique, and we'll be back in 90 seconds.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org, www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
Yard House Restaurant of Temecula takes this special time to salute the Temecula men and women in uniform who've answered the call for our freedoms. Let's give them the hero's welcome they deserve, as they have fought hard to restore peace around the world. American troops are our angels of protection, so stand up and salute them proudly. That's from Yard House Restaurant in Temecula, where they say service isn't just a courtesy, it's a commitment. Call 951-296-3116 for Yard House Restaurant of Temecula at 40770 Winchester Road in Temecula.
And welcome back. You're tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere in the world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed, with my co-host, Dr. John Smith. And we're talking about hypervigilance tonight, related to what's going on in the atmosphere between COVID, political things, maybe marriage. It could be a whole bunch of things that could be causing it. Mm-hmm. Lord, hear our prayer. And so what are some other things that you think people should be aware of that they might be experiencing during this really hypervigilant time?
Well, I'm going to share something personal because
Okay.
I guess I could say, okay, with my training and my background, if it's happening to me, it must be happening to a lot of people out there.
Sure.
I've had the privilege of being able, mostly during this whole COVID thing, to be able to work mostly from home. I enjoy that. I enjoy being at home. I don't have a large home, so my wife and I are together all of the time now.
Mm-hmm.
So we have our own little places to go, but we're still together all the time, and so that creates stress in our relationship. We're working through it, and we're doing okay working through it, but boy, we've had some stressful times just by being together all the time. I personally am having Zoom fatigue because I teach and then I do other everything I do is pretty much being done online on the computer and being done on Zoom. And while Zoom is a form of communication, I'm so happy that there is such a thing, but I'm also, like, my whole day gets spent on Zoom calls, and so I'm Zoom fatigued. Just being in the house all the time is stressful. I mean, I've been going out daily for walks and other kinds of things, or I go to the store occasionally, and but it's the whole world has changed, and that means that my habits and my routine have changed, and I believe, I'm going to say I, because I know I am a creature of habit, and especially as I get older, and everything in my life pretty much has been tossed upside down. And here's the interesting thing. Now I'm creating new habits and rituals which have helped, but at some point I'm going to have to go back to something else, which I don't know what that is, whether it's the way it used to be or some hybrid version of that. So what I'm saying is that I believe for everybody, besides just what we were talking about, there is a lot of just generalized stress because there's so much happening that has changed our routine, our rituals, our relationships.
Do you sometimes find also after so much of Zoom, your eyes burn? Because I've had that experience with, I see all my counseling clients on Zoom now, and after a few clients, I find my eyes just really burn. I have to go do something else for a little bit, let my eyes rest, just close them for a little bit.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I get that too. And actually, I had a pair of glasses that were designed for me to look at the computer, and they broke. And I haven't had a chance to get them repaired. So the glasses that I wear for other purposes they'll work, but I feel like I'm straining my eyes, and I get the sore kind of burning eyes, and just all of that little blurry vision.
sure. And another thing I'm finding is causing some of the hypervigilance as well, and a lot of strain on relationships is the financial losses. I like what Zig Ziglar said one time. He said, I don't want to say money is the most important thing in the world, but next to breathing, it's a close second. And really, we laugh about that. But when you're wondering how you're going to make rent, how you're going to buy food, how you're going to take care of the children, one, that's a big strain on relationships because people start clamming up because they don't want to make their spouse panic because they feel like they need to protect them. And that goes both ways. And so
Right.
people stop talking, and next thing they know, they're fighting.
Yeah.
And that also adds sometimes to paranoia because they say, well, why aren't they talking to me anymore? Are they seeing somebody else? Do they not want to be with me anymore? All part of the hypervigilance that go on. Have you seen some of that as well?
Oh, absolutely. I've seen all of those things. People are just, I don't want to use there are people out there that are paranoid, but a lot of people use the term paranoid when they're suspicious or when they're on guard, or like you said, when they're like all of a sudden, well, why is this happening? And that's not officially what we call paranoia, but,
Right.
But we understand what we're meaning is that we start distrusting. We distrust what we're being told from external sources. We start to being distrustful of what we're hearing from even friends and coworkers and colleagues, and then we start distrusting ourselves and our family members, and then that's when we really start to get into trouble. I'm sure there have been a lot of arguments and fights that have been baseless, but they've been about whatever I thought it was about.
Sure. And a lot of that, we pretend that we don't do this, but my experience has been it's something that happens. And we put our value based on our earning capacity. And when that's suddenly ripped out from under us, case in point, I live on love offerings. And because of the new restrictions that have gone in, and they're needed restrictions, I'm not resenting them, I suddenly had no funerals. People are dying. Don't get me wrong, I'm going to say something that sounds awful, and I don't mean it to sound awful. It's just a fact that funeral homes and at the coroner's office, bodies are being stacked like cordwood because people are still dying in droves. But they can't do services because of where we are with the shutdowns right now. So Friday will be 3 weeks since I've done a service.
Oh, wow.
And that's the main income I receive. And so I feel the pinch as well. Now I'm starting to get some calls because things are starting to lighten up just a little bit where they can now go to doing outdoor services again. But yeah, and I didn't realize how much my self-worth was tied up in that, because I always
Right.
been easygoing. I've always lived off love offerings, done it for 30 years as a priest. But this time, it took me by surprise, because it's not just that, it's a culmination of that and these other things we're talking
Right.
about.
Right.
And I think that's why people are feeling the hypervigilance so much, is because it's not just one thing. It's getting it from all angles, it feels like.
Yes, and another piece of hypervigilance, which is, I think, important to add, is it's not just being on hyper alert. It's just not being able to stop being on hyper alert.
Right.
And even when things are going smoothly, I am still kind of looking over my shoulder, waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yes.
And so, especially since we don't have answers, and there's more that we don't know than what we do know in general, it makes things tough because we can't plan and we can't predict. And as humans, I think we need to feel like we're in control, even though it's an illusion that we are in control. We got to feel like we're in control of something. And if I can't plan and predict, then that really throws me off.
And the fact that there's some outlets trying to say other outlets are fake news and stuff. Now you have the added stress of, well, what information do I believe?
Yeah.
And what's real and what's not real. I mean, the listeners of the show know that I don't say something until I've researched it, fact-checked it, so they know that this is a reliable source.
Right.
But it took a long time. I mean, the show's been on almost 3 years.
Right.
And that's given me time to prove myself that this is how I do things. So they know that they get straight information. I don't
Right.
have a bias when I report something. But there's so much confusion out there right now, and so many politically motivated things being put out there, that now there's a lot of people wondering, well, is this true? Is this not true? How do
Right.
and that just adds to the stress.
Right.
I can remember there's a therapist, I'm sorry, I can't think of his name off the top of my head. I think it's the same guy who wrote the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Oh, right. Oh, no,
And-
I can't
and-
even think of his name, but yeah.
And one day he was talking about how we can describe our stress. And when we're in our healthy place, it's like standing with both feet on the ground firmly.
Right.
Then as we add stress, it's like we're lifting one foot a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And the more stress we add, the higher that foot goes.
Right.
And right now, a lot of people are experiencing that they have one foot on the ground and one almost pointed to the ceiling.
Right.
And they don't know how to keep their balance
That's-
doing that.
That's correct.
So,
Yeah, and since there's no official end to when things are going to get however they're going to get, I don't even know if I can say get back to the way they were,
right.
because things have changed. So I think one of the things we can tell people is that in psychotherapy world we teach a thing called radical acceptance,
Right.
which means it is what it is, and you accept it even if you don't like it. It doesn't mean you can't try to change it or you can't do something about it, but at some point, if you've done everything that you can do and it is what it is, you just say, all right, I have to accept this is the way that it is. I don't know what's going to be. I can't predict it. So all I can say is this is what is right now.
Exactly. And I want to point out to the listeners that there's a difference between acceptance and apathy. And what we're talking about is not apathy. We're talking about we're aware of the situation, we care about the situation, and we accept where we are. One of the things I go over with a lot of my patients is the idea of what's the reality of the situation and what's my place in that reality.
Right.
And that's almost a mantra for me. And wherever I am in that reality, that's where my acceptance has to be.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, like I said, it's accepting what is right now,
Right.
in the moment. Because what is right now isn't necessarily what will be later.
Right.
Okay, and so we have to be kind of in the now and in accepting this is what is now. And then it's kind of almost like you have to have a checklist. Is there anything that I can do right now to change the situation, to change the circumstances? If the answer is yes, do it.
Right.
If the answer is no, then accept that right now I'm not able to do anything more than what I've done. And as soon as something changes externally, or as soon as I figure out what there is that I can do to change it internally, then I can do something. And that, I think, helps us to feel more in control of what we can control, and we don't have to try to worry about things that are completely outside of our realm, outside of our range.
Right. And I like the idea of a checklist. I think that's a really good way. It's not too simplified, but it helps us be present for what we're doing. Because I need stuff like that. Because it gives me a to-do to look at. And when I have that, for me, it empowers me a little bit, and it takes some of the fear factor out for me.
Yeah. Well,
I'm going to have you turn that just a little bit towards you.
Okay. We were talking about this earlier on a different topic, but it comes up when we're in fear and when we're in this hyper vigilant, hyper aroused state that's called fight or flight. Biologically, what's going on is our emotional mind, our survival brain takes over. And quite literally, our logical thinking, problem-solving mind sort of gets shut off or put aside, while our instinctual emotional mind takes over to fight the threat or run from the threat, whatever. So when we're in this stressful situation, we can't think clearly.
Right.
So having something, even actually literally having a checklist or having something that grounds you, that helps you to go, okay, let me think about this, will immediately start to engage your thinking mind, a logical mind, and start to, once it's engaged, then the emotional mind will start to slow down. The problem is getting the emotional mind to listen to what's going on, and that's what I said earlier. When you sing or do something silly, it changes the channel in the mind, which then starts to quiet down the central nervous system. So,
Well, yes, because when you're trying to think your way out of it, it just throws in more fear pictures to look at, and well, this will go wrong then. And this will go wrong then. And so I agree, you have to change the channel on that. That's a perfect way of putting it. And then it makes it so you can breathe a little bit. And if you can learn to not be so upset with yourself because you got upset, give yourself a break to realize, hey, a lot of people are going through this. I'm not stupid for going through this. It's what we're walking through. And a lot of people are feeling stressed out. And this is some ways I can get through this. This isn't the end to everything.
right.
And sometimes it's hard to remember, this isn't the end. It's not always going to be like this.
Yeah.
It's funny, when we have a joyful thing happen, we think it's going to be a short time, but when something bad happens, we think it's forever.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. And it just seems to go on and on and on and on. In our mind, we create this series of events and catastrophes. I call it watching disaster movies in our mind. And
Yes.
some people are really good at that. I call it the what-ifing. What if this? What if that? What if this? And right now, there are a lot of those what-ifs, and people can go running with, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? And unfortunately, the part of your mind, the emotional part of your mind, takes that quite literally. It doesn't understand that those things you're thinking could happen, might happen, possible. Your emotional mind thinks that those things are actually happening, and it's preparing you for this attack when there is nothing to prepare for at the moment.
Right.
And maybe more than likely, most of those what ifs will never even come true.
Well, yeah. And one of the things I do with some of my clients is point out the difference between facts and feelings, because they're two different things. And we talk about that quite a bit on this show. But when you're in the middle of it, these feelings can really look like facts.
Yeah.
And so, again, changing the mind, changing the channel, and realizing, no. And sometimes one of the simple things I do, and I'd be interested in your input with this, is I'll ask people, where are your feet? And they think it's kind of simple. I say, no, where are your feet? Well, they're right here. Where's your butt? Well, in the chair. Okay. So your feet are on the ground. Your butt's in the chair. Where are you? You're here.
Right.
Keep it simple. Just look where your feet are, where your butt is, and bring it to the now.
Right. Yeah, because our mind has the capacity to time travel. So
Yes.
I can be, depending on which time frame my mind is in, I can be thinking about stuff that was, or in the past, what has happened. I can think about the future, what could happen, what might happen, or I can be in the now, this is.
That's
right? And the healthiest place to be is right now, because technically that's all that exists. That's all that there really is now. What was has already happened. It doesn't exist anymore. What could be, what might be, hasn't happened yet, so it doesn't exist. It's in the realm of possibility, but so is everything else. So being in the now is probably the best and healthiest place to be, but that's probably the hardest things for humans to do. I spend more time trying to get people to be in the moment, and it's really hard for them to do that. So.
Well, speaking of where we are now, we're
Yeah.
at the next commercial break, and so Frank's getting all ready to go, and I'm being co-hosted tonight with Dr. John Smith. I'm Father John Reed, and we'll be back in 90 seconds on Viewpoint with Father John.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
Yard House Restaurant of Temecula takes this special time to salute the Temecula men and women in uniform who've answered the call for our freedoms. Let's give them the hero's welcome they deserve, as they have fought hard to restore peace around the world. American troops are our angels of protection, so stand up and salute them proudly. That's from Yard House Restaurant in Temecula, where they say service isn't just a courtesy, it's a commitment. Call 951-296-3116 for Yard House Restaurant of Temecula at 40770 Winchester Road in Temecula.
And welcome back. You're tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere around the globe at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am co-hosted with Dr. John Smith, and you are listening to Viewpoint with Father John at this moment. This is great.
Yes, I'm having a great time. Thank you for having me on as guest host.
Always
for the
love
next
to.
few weeks.
Always love to have you, and it's So here's what's going to happen, kids. We'll be on next week, and then Christmas Eve, the station will be on automation, meaning they're going to just play music. New Year's Eve is going to be the same thing, and then the first Thursday in January we'll be back for these last two parts of this segment that we're doing, which if you're hearing things that resonate with you, you can watch this over and over again on YouTube. That's perfectly okay, because I know I have some listeners that tell me that they take notes, particularly when you're on the show with me, and very rightly so, they should. But sometimes we like to rehear it so that we catch things that we missed the first time around. I know when I get a program that's I feel really good about, I like to do that because I know that there'll be things that I didn't catch because I'm trying to absorb so much.
Yeah.
And right now, people are going to find, and I like your comments on this, that in this hypervigilant state, that's going to feel like they have dementia because they're going to forget things that they normally don't forget, and that's from the adrenaline going so much. And I just want you to know that that's par for the course. It's going to happen that way. You're going to forget your keys. You're going to forget something else. You're going to find yourself going out to the car several times because you keep forgetting something you meant to bring in, or go back to the house you meant for your briefcase, whatever. So you want to talk about that?
And it's kind of like what we were just talking about before the break about our mind being in different time zones. Because if I'm preoccupied, either thinking about something that I have to do or something that's going on, or if I'm stuck thinking about something that's happened, then my mind is there. It's not focused on what's happening right now. So I'm mindless as opposed to being mindful. So when my thinking mind isn't present, then my emotional mind, or what we call our subconscious mind, takes over. And that, let's think of that as sort of the automatic pilot.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got all these little mini programs. Let's just say, like, you don't have to learn to drive a car every time you get in. Most people just get in the car and they go.
Right.
And which part of the car or the mind is driving the car? Well, the subconscious mind is using the drive the car program because that's automatic. And so most of us spend a lot of time on automatic pilot, even during the day.
Right.
Somebody says, "You're not here with me. Where are you?" My mind, well, my mind is elsewhere. Well, then which part of the mind is kind of driving the bus? Well, that's the subconscious mind. So it's easy to be preoccupied and not present. And when our mind is preoccupied, at least our intellectual mind is preoccupied, then the subconscious mind just takes over and does what it's programmed to do. Happened to me the other day. I was going to an appointment. I was heading toward the appointment, which happened to be a few exits past my exit that I get off on to go to my office. Well, my mind was elsewhere. Next thing I know, I pull off the freeway and I'm heading to the office. And I was basically at the office when I realized, oh, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be somewhere else. And I made, but I was on automatic pilot, and my, like the horse knew the way back to the barn and took me there. I wasn't driving the car. So that can happen to anybody. That's not abnormal, but it is. If that's happening, it means your mind is preoccupied.
That's why I wanted to bring that up. Another thing that might happen to some of us is weird dreams. Weird dreams where things are just out of control, where we're trying to make things work and things just won't come together the way that we think they're supposed to. And that's just the subconscious, again, trying to match, part A with slot B, because nothing's lining up the way that we want it to. Mm-hmm. And the stress, we're so overwhelmed while we're awake that the subconscious is trying to work it out in our sleep too, so that somehow we feel we have some type of control of something.
Exactly.
And we feel more out of control.
I call that the night shift is working, trying to file things away in various compartments, like you said, and unfortunately a lot of the things that stress us out, that we're worried about, they don't have a compartment.
Right.
So the night shift kind of puts them on the side and says, okay, and then the next night, the night shift says, okay, what are we going to do tonight? Okay, well, we got this stack over here. Oh, here's these things we couldn't get rid of last night. Can we put them somewhere tonight? Oh, no, there's no place to put them, and they just keep bouncing around in there until we either get rid of them somehow, or the night shift finds a place to put them.
And some funny things can happen with that. And I'm going to share some stuff about my brother because he's my big brother, and that's what we little brothers do. when he was up in San Jose working on Rancho Laguna Seca, he's the one who founded that whole concept, which was very stressful. I mean, this was several millions of dollars and all these political things. As he said, one time after it was all done, someone asked him how he did it. He says, it was simple. I didn't know it was impossible, because it was an impossible task. It really was. But in his stress, one time in his sleep, he got up. The next day he was supposed to have a meeting of all the principals. And in his sleep, he had called each one of them and canceled the meeting. He didn't know it. It was in his sleep. So the next day he shows up for the meeting and nobody's there. And he's really angry. And he starts calling people, where are you? Why aren't you here? And they said, well, you called us last night and canceled the meeting. I did not. Yes, you did. And his wife said, yeah, you did. So one of her jobs became, before he gets on the phone, make sure he's really awake.
Right.
Another time, he woke up, sat straight up in bed, and started screaming about, but the Indians, because they're dealing with property stuff.
Right.
Totally asleep. And so his stress was so great, and it entered his dream so great, that his body started responding as if he was awake when he wasn't. So if that happens to you, you're not ready to be locked up in the funny farm, okay? It's just some people, according to their level of stress, will respond in different ways. And if you've had this happen, then you kind of get what I'm talking about. Other people are probably just sitting there laughing, saying, what in the world was that?
Right. Well, it actually does happen. And, people sleepwalk, they sleep eat, they sleep, and sometimes that happens under stress, like you said. Also, it's pretty common that something like that can happen if you're taking certain medications.
Yes.
Ambien is notorious for that kind of situation, so you got to be careful about taking medications to help you sleep, because that can actually create other issues.
Right.
Not that you shouldn't take them if they're prescribed, but they're just be careful when you take them, and know that there are things that can happen like that. And certainly it can happen if you're under the influence of certain drugs or alcohol. But yes, that's not an uncommon thing.
And I do want to throw in there that if you are having that kind of experience with your medication, please write it down and share that information with your physician. It's very important for them to know, because if you don't tell them, they don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
So just a little precaution there.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's funny. Some people are afraid that they're going to disappoint their doctor, so they don't tell them what's happening, because they're afraid the doctor will not like them or get mad, or that they'll upset the doctor. And
Right.
sometimes they live with side effects and symptoms for a long time because they don't want to tell the doctor.
We suffer looking good.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I was going to bring up during this segment, and we'll talk about it on other shows as well. One of the things that adds to the stress is trying to act like we're not stressed. People ask how we're doing. We say, oh, we're fine. We're okay. And we laughed at FINE stands for frustrated, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. But when we're trying to pretend everything's cool, and here's a line I have a lot of friends use, I have it better than I deserve, that kind of thing. And while I get the idea of it, the positive talk, right now, it's more important to be real. If you're hurting, people don't know you need help if you don't say, I'm hurting. They just think, oh, okay, things are going great with you. And it reinstills the idea that you're alone through this. This is not a time to be alone. This is a time to let other people, because you're also keeping them from talking about their pain as well. And
Right.
if you can be strong enough to be weak, you may not just save your life, you may save the life of somebody else.
And I think this is one of the things when we were talking about people, like especially with relationships, if
Yeah.
we're together all the time, if you're hurting and I'm hurting, then either I'm going to hold my pain back because I don't want to cause you more pain, or I'm going to not have an outlet for my pain because you're hurting, or we're both going to be sort of inadequate at helping each other. And I think that's an important thing to understand. And, add kids into the mix,
Yeah, we don't want to
Boy.
stress the kids out. Yeah.
Right, or they don't want to stress us out, or they're stressing us out. But we, so it's really hard to find outlets, which
Well,
is, that's why folks like us exist. But a lot of people are hesitant to reach out to professional help because they don't say, "I'm not crazy." Well, you don't have to be crazy. In fact, most people that probably would benefit the most from our kind of help are people that have issues of life that they just need to get somebody to listen to them, and they need somebody to maybe give them some direction and some ideas about what to do with whatever their situation is. It's not like they are sick or mentally ill. Of course, those people are there too, and that's what we're here for as well.
look, I'm not ashamed to say that I see somebody. I deal with some issues, and I'm very glad that I have a good psychotherapist, that I'm able to get some clarification and I can bounce some things off of. And it's a trust relationship. One of the beautiful things about that is the confidentiality. I know that whatever I say in there stays there. Just like when
Right.
people come to me with confessions, the idea of the confession is not for people to feel bad, but so that they don't carry it on their shoulders anymore. They hand it off to the priest, who says, "Okay, that ends here. You're loved. Go and don't feel this hurt. You don't have to carry this hurt anymore." I think it's gotten a bad rap of what it means. That people go in and they think they're going to be punished for the stuff. And no, the idea is so that you can be free of it. It's a good mental health practice, but I also believe in a good therapist. And always be honest with your doctor, because these are good men and women who really want to help you as their patient. They care about you.
Right, right. But they can't do their job if you don't give them the information that they need to do their job well.
Well, people I've dealt with in addiction, it's kind of funny. They say, "Well, psychiatry never helped me." I said, "Were you ever honest with them?" "Well, no." "Well, how are they supposed to help you?"
Exactly.
"Well, aren't they supposed to be able to guess?" No, they're a psychiatrist, not a psychic.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say the psychic is down the street.
Yeah, it wouldn't be so funny if these weren't real stories, but they are real stories, and so they're quasi entertaining. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
good men and women of medicine and of therapy.
Right.
You gotta give them a chance, but at least give them partial information that's real.
Right. They can't help you if you don't give them the information, the accurate information to give you the help that you're paying them to get. So
It's like going to the mechanic because your engine's broken, and you're saying, I think I need air in my tire." So it comes back down to that. Well, we're down to our last 3 minutes. What are some ideas you want to leave people to think about until next week's show?
you just put me on the spot with that.
Of
one,
course I
Boy,
did.
that was. Well, the first idea is to have 3 ideas, knowing that you're going to throw that at me in 3 minutes left to go without having anything specific. So, no, I think.
You could always boil an egg.
Yeah. Well, let me recap a couple of things that we did already say. One is that we are looking, if you're feeling overwhelmed and anxious, or especially if you are having high anxiety, which sometimes we call panic, doing those breathing exercises, singing at the top of your lungs, especially, your favorite song or a song on the radio is really interesting, but it works really well. Generally de-stressing yourself, and I've said this on several shows when we've kind of talked about coping skills, something I do and I've started doing, and I do it on a daily basis as much as possible, is I'm going for a walk, or, if you're an exerciser, go exercise, go to the gym. It's kind of hard to find gyms that are safe and open. If you can't go to the gym, you can still walk, you can run, you can do something, but what happens is when you do that, it burns off those stress chemicals.
Right.
And you may not even realize that you're revved up as much as you are until you burn some of them off, and you all of a sudden go, oh. And you're finally kind of starting to reset back to normal. You don't even realize sometimes how revved up that you have been or that you are. So walking or exercising burns off those stress chemicals. Create private time and private space, even if it just means while you're out walking, your spouse or somebody has something, private time. So that's really important. More to come in next week's show, but
Absolutely.
those are...
Well, you've been listening
I
to Viewpoint with Father John with your co-host, Dr. John Smith and Father John Reed, and we'll be back next week. If nobody told you this week that they love you, let me be the first, and thank you again for tuning in this week. We look forward to being with you again next week. Peace.
KCAA